What's up and welcome to Idle Insights, a show where each week I, Treavor Bettis, talk to interesting people about idle champions and Dungeons and Dragons. And returning, not from last week. I haven't done this in a little bit, forgive me. But a returning guest is Masood Haque. How you doing?
Hey everyone, I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be back talking about Gozrick and Idle Champions and everything. Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah. If people don't know what you do on the interwebs, what do you do? Where you been?
For sure, for folks who don't know me, hi, I'm Masood. I'm a comedian, an actor, a TTRPG enthusiast, and most importantly, cat dad. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Maroodboy, MAHRUDEBOI. And in the the D&D space, the TTRPG world, I'm particularly known for doing stuff with the Rivals. Rivals of Waterdeep has been a show that just wrapped up on Sunday, but I've been a part of it since season 8, back in 20, so like 3 years ago. And then been playing with them for a while. Show's been on for a little bit longer than that, but yeah, I've also been doing stuff with there's a group called Indoor Recess. We did a lot of stuff with the Roll20 for a little bit. And I'm just generally in the space and around.
Heck yeah. I don't know if I told you this last time, but when I was doing the social media stuff for CNE last year, I was doing a tweet and I was went to go tag you in it, and I didn't know what your name was. So I went to Twitter, looked you up, saw your tag, and just went and I just got a massive kick out of the name.
I'm very happy. I'm gonna be honest, I don't get a chance to brag much about myself, but I love that I've been able to use that username. There's a lot of reasons. MAH is like, that's my arcade handle. Like when I would put it, it's your first two initials and then your last one. So I was able to put that. Rude Boy. I spent a little time listening to ska, not a lot, but it's more so in growing up in Urdu. My mom used to call me Badmash, which was kind of like as a rude kid, like mischievous kind of thing. And so I was able to put all of it together in Marood Boy.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, man, I love it. I'm really proud of it. But I won't talk about it unless I get a chance to.
Hey, that's what this show's for. It gives you a chance to talk about the weird things you want to talk about.
Heck yeah.
Well, let's start off with this not too weird thing for the topic of this show.
Sure.
A little icebreaker question: who was your first D&D character?
My very first D&D character. So back in college, technically it wasn't D&D, but I'm gonna count it. It was Pathfinder. But at that time, I didn't know the difference. And so I ended up playing this guy Dakesh, and I cannot remember his last name for the life of me. Only because I remember my friends made fun of his name by calling him Dickish, and I was like, "His name's Dakesh, guys." And
you hate to see it. You hate to see it,
man. It happens when you play with your friends.
It's true.
It's true. But no, it was a great time. He had a Naginta, which is just a spear, but in Pathfinder, it was particular because there was like essentially a samurai class. Yeah. And it had a little fun just building that world. Yeah, it was a good time. Great guy. Once split a boat from a jumping attack once he was like high enough level, and that felt really cool.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a good time.
You made me think with like just friends finding the things with names. I find that I have to do that all the time with my home group as a DM.
Yeah,
where, like I have a character. I'm like, okay, this is a very pivotal character. I have to give them a name that they can't do anything with.
Right.
And like 2 months ago or so, I had this like really important character show up, and I said their name, and I just hear my friend Alex over Discord go,
"No!"
I'm like, "No! He found it!
He found something! I thought it was foolproof." Oh man, that's I understand that feeling. It's a hurtful feeling.
It's like, no, I worked so hard. I do feel like possibly the best recorded example of that is Will Wheaton on the Penny Arcade games back in the day when he had Aofel, and immediately Mike Erholig was like, "Oh, we'll call you Al." And he's like, I worked so hard to find a name that just sounded cool, but no, I'm Al.
Yeah. Oh, just Al. can call me Al. Truly, the Paul Simon album. Right, that's my favorite album.
There you go. There we go. It's all great. Interconnected. Well, you mentioned Gozrick at the beginning of this, and we've talked about Gozrick on the show before, but of course there could be folks in the chat who haven't seen that previous episode and don't know who Gozrick is. So who is he for those people?
For sure. In the Rivals of Waterdeep canon, Gozrick is one of the rivals. He is a gnome druid from the Frostfell plane who made his way to Faerun and is predominantly not your typical druid in the fact that he is a businessman first. He is working deals. He's finding ways to uplift the local community and, more importantly, listen to people who've got some harebrained ideas and whether or not it's worth investing in. That particularly became one of his later beats as he was settling into Waterdeep. But by the end of the show, he is a level 20 druid who also is a golem construct. Sorry, spoiler. You'll figure that out at the end. But for a while, he's a socialist businessman druid construct. That's the best way to describe it.
That's a great string of words. And he's also got a new skin in Isle Champions. Can you show that one? Masood, tell us a little bit about this one.
I would love to tell you a little bit about this. And we were talking about Crocs earlier, so this is important. A little backstage moment. But so Gozrick is also, above all things, a chef. And he is known for his ice spider stew. Whether or not people enjoy it as much as he does is a delusion he will not break away from. But this skin just showcases a lot of that. We replaced wonderful folks at Isle Champions replaced the regular like merchant stall with a food cart laden with goods. There's a ladle swirling around in the actual like tub of stew that's working on, and he's got a chef hat. There's a little spider in there ratatouilleing the work. There was a lot of fun details.
I didn't even notice that.
Oh yeah. There's some fun stuff in this one. I recently watched the menu before I got a chance to talk to the directors and like the artist behind it.
Yeah.
And it really inspired it a little bit. I was like, oh yeah, take that idea and then we'll add some of the other elements. I don't even know what food that is so blue on his on his chef. It's like, but I love it. And then he's got some nice wool socks that he must have picked up from Costco because I have that exact same pair. And some wonderful Crocs with the little icicle fidgets, or I don't know what they're called. The things that go into
I just call them the crocky things.
The crocky things. Yeah. So he's having a great time. It's truly an incredible skin.
Oh my gosh.
Man, I threw a lot of ideas at them and they ran with it in an amazing way.
That is I didn't notice the spider. That's so good.
Yeah. That was the fun. That like I think I mentioned it offhand, and then I saw the final work and I was like, amazing,
beautiful.
Yeah.
God, you mentioned the menu in there. My wife and I watched that just on a whim one night.
Oh yeah.
And we went into it like it was like, oh yeah, we heard this was a horror movie and we didn't really hear anything about it. And we started watching this and we found ourselves starting to laugh and we're like, are we terrible people or is this like a dark comedy?
Yeah.
And so after I saw, I literally went to like every other food industry person I knew. I went, you have to watch this movie. Mm-hmm. Like if you've worked in the food industry, you have to watch this movie.
It is so good. God, and like having also worked in a restaurant prior, I was like,
see, I didn't even know that. I just immediately assumed you did when you said you liked the menu.
I did 100%. I worked in it was a restaurant that served a community that didn't appreciate the food that we made, and that's what that movie's about. Oh man, it is so good. It was
fantastic. So Rivals. Let's talk a bit about Rivals. So sure. Tell the folks what exactly Rivals of Waterdeep was.
Yeah, Rivals of Waterdeep is a stream that started out of the Stream of Many Eyes a few years back. And it is one of the longest running streams, all POC cast, where we rotate the DMs. That kind of became the thing that we were known for, is that every person at the table got a chance to be the dungeon master and sort of tell the story of the Rivals, which was really beautiful when we got to the end of it, because we really felt like all of us had this deep signature and investment, not only in our own characters, but also like the growth and development of the other characters, because we talked about it, we crafted it, we worked on it in our own seasons. Yeah, right. That's a little bit about Rivals. We'd been around for a little bit. I think like 28. No, it was 4 years. So 2019 is when it officially started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I also thought it was 2018. So and the rotating DM thing. I mean, I've had several of y'all's cast on the show, and actually no, I've had the entire cast. Yes. And that the rotating of the DM is so fascinating to me, because it's one of those things that, like, you know, back in the day, you always heard like about this weird off campaign that there's like, oh yeah, we always changed up DMs, and the reaction was like, how did you do that?
Right.
And so to have a stream not only do it, but show off like how well and how good that can work for the story, absolutely incredible. Like I genuinely, after seeing you all do it, I was just like, why aren't more people doing this?
If folks are interested in it, I can tell a little bit about what I think makes the sauce so secret, or how it comes together. It's truly we're doing a show where we were doing a show where we knew we were performing for an audience.
Yeah.
So the idea of, and you don't need that, but if know who your audience is.
Yeah.
If it's your friends, if it's each other, if that's what it is, know that. But for us, we knew it was for the folks who'd been watching and the folks who'd been interested in it. And so in that, we wanted to always serve like the characters in a way that, like, the interest was always on them. What are they going through? What are they growing as? And also the people at the table, are we all having fun?
Yeah.
And then like that part is whether it's improv, which I do a lot of, or it's D&D, people watch it to see people have fun. That is what is the vicarious mirror neurons or whatever that happens in the audience. Like, but that's the thing. And so how do you make sure you have fun? Also, even with rotating of the GMs, well, I mean, like, talk about your lines and veils. Talk about the things that you feel comfortable just straight up avoiding. And other things that you want to, like, oh, hey, we can kind of allude to it in the side, and that's okay. And also then that gives you the play of like, okay, you'd be surprised. Once you list all the things you can't do, all the other things you still can do.
Yeah.
All the other things that are still available in ways that you're like, I don't know, maybe as a GM, you might get nervous about like being mean to your players, or like sort of doing, I'll speak for myself of like, I'm a dramatic guy. I like to create story and tension. I was like, I'm going to put your characters through some stuff. Yeah. Is that okay? And like trusting a little bit of like, hey, we covered the things that I know you don't like, and the things that you don't have to explain for whatever reason. Like now we can, because the rest of the stuff I was conscientious of that, and we can kind of play with it. And a lot of that happened. I think I'm rambling.
Oh no, talk as much as you want about this. This is fascinating.
No, for sure. Well, thank you. Then I'd say it happens a lot also before you arrive at the session. So like before our seasons, when someone would be rotating, there'd be a moment where we'd be off, and then at some point someone would message the group and be like, hey, I want to talk about these couple of things, just want to set some time and sort of touch base. For me, I really liked, if I could, I'd like to have everyone in a meeting, and if not, just to get an individual one-on-one with everybody and like touch base with them about it. It really it allowed me to surprise the cast for sure when it was my season, and it allowed also for me to be surprised because this conversation often would happen months before the topic would then be revealed in the stream or in some way where I'm like, I didn't take notes on that, but you did. And like, you remembered. And you made something that my mind couldn't even conceive of, because it wasn't my mind. Like like the beauty of teamwork, right? Like just seeing things and incorporating things from different angles made us really create something that felt so interwoven, and also definitely more than the sum of its parts, in a really lovely way.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Like, because I mean, you were talking about how you had ownership of characters and story, but it's like
Mhm.
also like, and I know y'all played in the Forgotten Realms and stuff, but there is like
Yeah.
that kind of joint ownership of the world. Because like,
Yeah.
you know, one of the ways I look at with DMs is like you may be playing in Forgotten Realms, but you're not
Mhm.
playing in the same Forgotten Realms.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
yeah,
100%.
like
Yeah.
my version of that is not going to be the same as Lauren's or anyone else's. And so for all of you to have at one point, you know, been the person that was behind the screen and orchestrating everything, but also like setting things up that
Yeah.
are in that world, that, and this is the thing that I absolutely love, setting things up that then the other GMs down the line can then pick up if they want to and do
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
with it. It's like you were constantly building this toolbox for each other.
Yeah. And it was a really wonderful way where I think ways we didn't even realize, because when you walk away also from a season or from your GM spot as you rotate it over, it's a weird moment of also letting go,
Yeah.
because it's like, oh no, there was these storylines that I wanted to get to, they wanted this, but like also part of our, and you can do different at a home game, like if you want to, like, I don't know what the rotation cycle would be if you were to do it, but the way we did it, we did like 10 episodes, right? So
Yeah.
like you got your 10 ones and you kind of like tell your story, and then you have to let go,
Mm-hmm.
and now the world is rotated into someone else's hand and you're back to being a player in it, which is also so much fun.
Yeah, I have to imagine though that
Yeah.
first session back as a player has to be like a little distorted. Like even though there's time between it, it's got to be a
Yeah.
little weird.
It's a little weird, specifically because I think there's also an unspoken rule for whatever reason that whoever's DMing also does the top of show of like, hey, welcome everyone, like kind of
Oh,
like bring
interesting.
us in. I don't think we ever talked about it out loud, but it was also like, no, we're not the DM, like we're not in that chair, you are. And so I think there was a ways of like first also jumping back, I was like, oh, I don't have to be responsible of like cultivating the audience in that way. I can just like be and like
Yeah.
experiencing that. So that is a definite shift. um and then also, like, I think depending on where the next season takes place is also one of the, like, a disorienting moment of like, I think we usually know it's like, oh, we'll get a hint like, hey, this is going to be a year later from the last season, or it's like it's
Mm-hmm.
picking up right where we left off. But truly, I think the fun and the way in which a lot of times when you're playing D&D, you just have to be ready for whatever comes next, makes that shift sort of, I think for me also starting as a player, then going to GM, and then going back to player. Most of us spent most of our time as playing, so I think that might have
Yeah.
also made the shift back a little easier.
And you DM'd this last season.
Mhm.
Did you DM'd before that as well?
I did season 10, and I got to do our 100th episode, which was such an
Wow.
honor. And then I got to do the first half of our last season.
Okay.
So we started this season, so season 15, where I did the first 6 episodes, and sort of set up. We knew we were doing our final season. We were saying goodbye to our characters. We were going to lead up to our series finale. But we also knew that our in our timeline, if we timed it right, our series finale would have lined up with in the anniversary of the True Many Eyes. And so we were like, oh, that would be a nice sort of also touching thing to
Yeah.
provide for our folks and our fans. And so the first 6 seasons were really for me, because we also knew in the back half that we wanted to honor the rotation
Mm-hmm.
aspect of our storytelling. So we were gonna like, okay, in these final episodes, we'll all rotate as well.
That's so cool.
So actually, when I think about it, I actually did the first 7. So I did the first 6, and then the first one back I also did,
Okay.
and then we switched out on the way out.
I noticed that because earlier today when I was getting questions ready, I was
Yeah,
like, I'm pretty sure Masood DM'd this last one. I'm gonna go check out the VODs and make sure I was right.
yeah,
And I clicked on the most recent one and I noticed no one had DM in their title. And I went,
yeah.
and I was like, no way, did they really? Because I immediately got what was going on there, and that's so freaking cool. Like,
It was really scary, I think, for a lot
I
of folks at
bet.
first. And I think for me, I had the easiest job out of anybody. And like truly, it was scary but I also had the easiest in the fact that like I went first. So I was able to set up the season, and thankfully, obviously, there's a huge pressure to our fans and the folks who have been with us since day one, or even the folks who were just joining in, that I wanted to really honor and like really like do right by. And also, I went first. So I could kind of set the tone in whatever way, sort of like do a thing. There was the as an artist or creative in any capacity, when you look at a canvas or a piece of marble, it is so scary. Or the blank page, it can be like,
it is infinite potential.
It's infinite potential. And also, you can then just run headlong at it, right? In some ways of ability of like, hey, trust yourself and just like sprint, and then look back and see what you made. And that's sort of what I did with some of the ideas that I was running through. I was like, I just spent a moment of just like really just like thinking about them, writing them down, and went back. And I was like, is this good? Is this bad? Crossing out what's good. And then trusting the things that also lined up in the pre-show session I did with everybody about like, hey, where do you also see your character ending at? What are the things that we want to tease up? And it was really fun to do it as well, because we ended up doing a mid-season like finale where we then, and also to honor the fact that we were rotating DMs, we switched to a bi-weekly system for the last couple episodes. So that way the GM would also have time to like really think about and get things right for when it was their week. Yeah, so once we set up the mid-season finale, we did a little bit of a boss battle, and the Xanathar might have been involved. Spoilers. It was sort of, we then were able to create a like I had episode 7 where everyone was kind of like, hey, what are we gonna do for this back half? And I was like, okay, this is our 0 point. This is where we're doing, like, I'm gonna call it the Schult incident because it took place at Schult. And now we're just gonna do time skips, because now we're talking about, we want to talk about the end of our characters' lives. We want to talk about what it's like as they deal with the end of sort of being the typical rivals, and what does that look like. So maybe we look at them at different points in their epilogues. And I just got to do that. You know what I mean? Like, no, I didn't have to like check in. It was like, hey, is that cool with how we're moving? I trusted it based on what we had been talking about and sort of building it. And then I think it gave everyone a really, I believe it helped everyone sort of then be like, okay, now we also have our freedom, because we can also just do a time jump into a moment. We don't necessarily have to start the next moment after something unless we want to. Like there's that ability to kind of be in the epilogue and in the mess of it.
Yeah, I had Eugenio on the show recently. I say recently, but it's probably been like a month or so. I don't know what time is. And I remember him saying that, like, yeah, you did this epilogue thing, and there was this kind of moment where like everyone else kind of clicked with it, like, oh, this is what we're gonna do.
Right. Yeah. And I also, like, because I got to go first, made it so much easier in a way of like, and I think I truly believe the way that Rivals like, gosh, so weird, the way that Rivals was, because we're
I know, I noticed I said it earlier in the show. I'm like, oh wow, that is weird.
Yeah. It is weird, dude. But the way that we set up the table and the way we all were there at it, I think there was a real and by the time we got to this point, everyone had GM'd once. Everyone had at least once, in some capacity. So I think there was a trust that they, and not only that we trusted them, but also that, I'll speak for myself, I knew I trusted myself. After doing season 10, I was like, oh, I can do this. Like, I know I can. The self-doubt is still there, the questioning about it, but also at least I have a little bit of evidence of just doing it and getting over that fear the first time, to be like, oh, and I can do it again. The high dive isn't scary once you've been off it once, you know?
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, man. So how, like, we talked about this format and everything, and outside of spoilers and everything, like how did the last episode go?
It was beautiful. Yeah.
That's
It was
really
really,
good.
it was really, really wonderful to do. I'll tell folks about this. We wanted to do a surprise for our fans, who especially the final season we were able to do through an Indiegogo like campaign. And so it was truly one of the moments where our fans really showed up for us and really
That's
supported
awesome.
us. It was beautiful, and we really wanted to honor them and do something that like hopefully gave them some closure and solace with the story ending. And we figured doing it in person would also allow that to happen. And not being tied by a con, because cons are great. Don't get me wrong. I've loved the live events that we've done. Yeah. It's been a blast, but it's also there's so much happening at the cons.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are going, and I hate to say this, you have to network. Like you have to meet with people. And like you can't.
Well, especially like if the game's at like 2 p.m., like you have had so much like just interactions between waking up and then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think there was a real beauty in like, hey, we're only gathering for the rivals. Like, yes, we've been at cons where it's like rivals are performing, so like that's why we're there. But also it's like, oh, Eugenio is doing a panel here. This person's which is incredible, and you should see all the panels that any rivals is doing in the future. I trust that they're going to be great.
100%. Full endorse.
For us, I think there was the value of like we were able to find a studio, the Chicago Podcast Network. Like we are able to rent a room there and like gather at the space. And then DC, we were talking about them a little bit backstage as well, is an incredible. I was our producer for this final season and a little bit of last season as well. They were able to take all the raw footage and just edit it together, and
it looks so good too.
It was beautiful. And like seeing the finished thing afterwards, like, oh my God. Usually I'm watching it live, right? And I'm just checking in to make sure it works out well. So it was really nice for us to then we were in chat with the folks who were watching it. And
so was it it was pre-recorded, right?
We pre-record. So I'll give you the full timeline breakdown, because our episode.
Sorry, this is the producer in me, chat. Like I'm fascinated by this stuff.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you, man. So on the 11th, we aired our finale. On the 3rd, we recorded it.
Wow!
And so we had an episode on the 28th of May. And then that was usually the next one 2 weeks prior. It was going to be on the 11th, where we do it live. But we had Brian, and we got Eugenio and DC and Sharif. My goodness, getting like everyone was able to come together in Chicago on that, like the Friday night before. And then we recorded on Saturday, and we like hung out. We got like dinner together as a group afterwards. And then Sharif also had to bounce. Latia had to get out of there. Like there was a moment where it was just like, it was really beautiful. We came for it.
Yeah.
And then we like sat with it. And then DC, the mastermind, and also the Chicago Podcast studio ended up sending us really great footage that we were able to work with, that he was able to work with. I didn't edit a thing. I'm not even gonna say I did anything. I'm not gonna use the we. DC did that, and with the Chicago Podcast Network, and did great work on it.
Yeah. I mean, just from the bit that I saw, that like the thing that I loved about all of you being in that studio, it felt personal. Like, you know, like it was all of you around the table. And the other thing that I really loved, because y'all did the swapping DMs thing in this one, there was no one who had that like prominent seat. And I'm not saying like that's a bad thing for DMs. Like that is how, like, you know, a table usually comes together. But like, because the way that y'all were doing it, it was a group of friends gathered around a table, and I loved that.
Thank you. Truly, Providence. We didn't plan the table setup. We arrived there. It was kind of situated that way. And then we just had a moment where it was like, okay, there is no prominent seat, but we do want to honor Tanya and Sharif by having them sit in the middle, because they had been there since the start of the Rivals. Latia and I, we moved to the other side because we were the next edition, and it felt right to have Brian and Eugenio next to each other as the first husbands of the North Ward. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, we're not gonna, no, that doesn't make any sense to do otherwise. And so it really, but at the same time, there was a moment where things were just shifting between all of us,
Mm-hmm.
especially the way in which Tanya set up that final, the finale was really smart, in kind of using um, Kent as this like a journalist,
Mm-hmm.
filling out the story of the rivals towards their last days, and then um, letting us then sort of also having a moment of like DM where we just got to talk about it, do a little narration.
I love that. I love
Mhm.
it. We got to take. I'm gonna hop in here real quick and say that we're gonna
Yeah,
be doing a giveaway here in
yeah,
a quick bit
please.
in chat. Our mod Gabe is going to put a keyword into the chat, and you can put it in for your chance to win 42 chests of your choice, excluding Bahamut chests. So be sure to keep an eye on the chat and
Mhm.
see what it is. Yeah, good luck on that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, no, that final episode though, I like the there is something so special about like the finale of a campaign.
Yeah,
Like, you know, like there's limited series, there's one shots and everything like that, and the endings of them do have that kind of like that little bit of it. But when
yeah.
it's this long running campaign with these characters that you know for so long, like there's just something different about like it hits even more different than like a TV show finale or anything like that.
Right.
It's so much more it's that but personal.
In such a deep way,
Yeah.
we have put in, gosh, okay, so at season 10, if I'm just doing the math right, we did 100 episodes. There's over 200 hours of content just
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
So we have close to 400 hours by the end of it with
Jeez.
everything that we've done. And like I've watched a lot of shows. I've read some books. I'm currently digging into the like N.K. Jemisin series. I'm
Oh
having a good.
yeah.
It's great. I unfortunately will not get to put close to 400 hours in it.
No.
Like
Yeah.
it won't happen.
Yeah.
But I got to do this with this campaign, and I know it's also, I'm just so grateful that we got to actually end it,
Yeah.
because it's I'm sure you've been there, but a lot of, for one reason or another, a lot of groups don't get to say goodbye to their characters.
Yeah.
Either something occurs, people stop having fun at the
Yeah.
table,
Yeah.
and you have to you 100% honor that.
Yeah.
And then it is still sad though,
Yeah.
because you kind of start, you don't get to say goodbye. So being able to say goodbye was uh, just like, so like truly, I can't thank the audience enough. Like the fans, the folks who came out and supported the Indiegogo campaign, like it was such a gift that they gave us characters, us players and our characters, which is also, I constantly would call people by their like real name, and so
Yeah.
like, Eugenio, you're up next in the turn order, or like, Kent, you're going next, and it's like, mm-mm.
Yeah, no, I do that all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
No, the thing like just home games with it, like you're saying,
yeah,
like not everyone gets to do that. And
yeah,
like that I endorse so hard. Like if you can, like if you see the cards laying out where it's like this isn't gonna go on much longer,
yeah.
if you can put an ending to it, please do it.
Honor it.
Because like the my first campaign that I ever ran for fourth edition,
Yeah,
same thing happened where we just kind of fell out of it. Fourth edition wasn't doing it for us
sure.
anymore. I mean, they were getting up into like level 15 and stuff, so combat was taking 3 hours.
Oh, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And we eventually just stopped with that campaign. And you
yeah.
know, I had plans in my head and everything like that. And I mean, like, oh God, what was it? It was like 6 or 7 years later. So 2019,
Yeah.
I actually messaged that whole group again. I was like, hey, what would you think about playing the last session? And so what I did was I
Yeah.
got permission from each of them and I wrote out what happened between where we stopped playing and where this was picking up.
Very cool.
And
Very
so
cool.
all of them came in with these like, you know, like they had an idea of like what I put down, but they built more into their head of what their character did in those.
Yeah, of course.
and we played out the last session, and it was great. And like they each became like demigods, so like I took each of them aside afterwards. I'm like, what's your god's name? What are their domains? Because
very
like
cool.
I do have plans down the road that these will be available for players in my home game to have as things like it. And just having that idea of like, what if we just got the band back together one more night?
Right.
It was so worth it.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a beautiful also setup of like, I think one of the great things about D&D or like just tabletop in general, and I've told people about it before, and I'll go on record saying it, is that it's a group storytelling.
Yeah.
It's a community narrative that you end up creating, and that's so beautiful and powerful, and it feels really like, I don't know how to say it, like primal, like kind of like real human in like a deep way, of just like gathering together to tell story, and like the ways in which we all contribute and grow. And one of the beautiful things about the way that you described it is that they also added their own little pieces, right? Like, because they, of course, they have their own investments about their characters. Yeah.
I mean, like I told him, like I can only do my best to say what events happened and what the outcomes of those were, but you know your characters, you know what they did in these things. You got an intuition about how they went through that.
Right.
Yeah. It's wild.
Mm-hmm.
So
is this group still? This is my own personal. Y'all still play, or is it like, do you have picked up a new band of heroes in the same world? Because you talked about the demigods a little bit, and I'm curious about that. Yeah.
So in 2014 when I started doing 5th edition, we were playing Tyranny of Dragons, and one of my players said something about like, oh man, you know, like we're doing these world shaking things. It sucks to know that like when we do the next campaign, it's not going to be there. And I went, no, right now I'm setting down every game that happens after this is in the same world. And so I've actually gone back and retroactively added that 4th edition campaign to this. So this new group this group's been going since 2018.
Yeah.
And they are level 19 right now. We're very close to the end.
Incredible.
They are now traveling with 3 of the characters from that campaign. One of my players was one of those characters.
Yeah.
And the overarching villain that I've had going for like 3 years now turns out to have been one of those players, because when I took those players aside, I turned to my friend Bree and I'm like, what do you want her to do? And she goes, I want her to become evil.
Hell yeah.
And I love that. And I was like, you've just given me ideas.
Beautiful. That's what a gift. What a gift.
Yeah, no, and like this villain has been like so cool, but only because I've been thinking of it in terms of what would Bela do, what would Bree's character do, not what does the villain that I want them to be do.
No.
It's such a different experience.
That's also what a good like compass point, because I think sometimes I've seen that. I have inspiration. I've watched you do things I could never think of, and like now to make that as a lead for an NPC that you're. Ooh, a previously PC NPC. What a cool setup.
Yeah. What was great is before I revealed who it was, that character actually killed my friend Kyle's character who was in that original campaign. And so when I revealed it, there was like 30 minutes later, he goes, wait, Bree killed me?
Oh, man.
I was like, oh, yeah, a little bit.
I guess we'll get a flashback of what happened between their gazes between them. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Really cool. Yeah. I for this last season, like, I really appreciate when you're allowed to like kind of do things that you have to have reverence for what you're creating, but I also think there's a value of holding nothing sacred. Of like just kind of like, hey, and like let me add something, let me create something. Like your voice also matters. Like you can try stuff. That's the only way it's going to get better. But I remember it ended up becoming a pivotal point this season, but Duo is a common NPC that every one of the rivals has voiced, and Duo suffers under the belief that he is a ghost, even though he's a corporeal living, breathing kobold. And so every person who's been the GM has like incorporated him. And when it got to this season, in season 10 I wanted to kill Duo, And that felt too mean. I felt like I hadn't, like at that point, it was my first time as a GM. I was coming in and I was like, this is too mean to everyone else. I can't do that. And so like, I had to. But I think sometimes, and also not to be rude to writers or anyone else who's creating stories, but I think I realized at that moment I wanted to have shock value, and the easiest way to do it is to kill a beloved NPC. It's kind of cheap.
It is. Oh, it absolutely is.
100%, 100%. And like I said, I was nervous to do it, so I was like, oh, like thinking about the ideas, wrote it down, went back to it, said no, right? Like you said, with it. This season though, kind of got to do it. I turned Duo into a ghost, like who was separated from his body because a doppelganger stole it, and like now it was just him astral projecting his form because he so believed that he was a ghost, that he was always been dead. And so like it was fun.
Wow.
You still got to like honor it and play with it and like still get to do the cool thing that I wanted to try and do. If you still have reverence, but you also hold nothing sacred.
Yeah I know what you mean though about like the easy ways to elicit a reaction.
Sure.
I did one of those in the campaign recently. And like without going into too much detail, there was an NPC like creature that they'd done everything they could to find. They found it again, and then during a fight, one of the big bads like teleported away with it. And my friend who is very attached to this character, like I can see him getting mad, and he looks up at the camera and he goes, "I cast Wish." It was literally the first instance of Wish being cast without a magic item in the campaign. And I was like, done. They're back.
Right.
It was one of those where I'm like, this is so cool, and you are so into this moment. No questions asked. You cast Wish, it's back.
That's also a great GMing moment of like, I've talked about this a little bit, but I know like Carlos Luna, a friend of mine, great dude, has mentioned this before, and I want to credit him on it, because he says follow the fun, and I think that's so key. I think that's really, really key. You notice that with your player, it was like, oh no, it would be fun for him to use Wish. Like the first time, this cool moment. Don't deny him that.
Literally, before we started playing, like they had just leveled up, and he's like, "Oh man, I have Wish now. Like, what am I gonna use for that?" And so the fact that it literally happened right there, it was so perfect. It was great.
Heck yeah.
We got a couple of questions from chat that I want to get in here before we have to head out.
Oh my gosh, it's 3:45.
I know, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Lurking Writer starts off with question. Chef Gozrick to prepare food for Akira in an ICP one-shot win.
Hey man, Ice Spider Stew is on the menu as long as I can get.
I'm not gonna lie. That might be the worst connection of words I've ever heard.
Ice Spider Stew? Come on, everyone is a critic.
My arachnophobe butt will be on the other side of there. What did Lord Orkira is always here for anything Gozrick wants to make.
Thank you, Lord. I see that. Sometimes you just gotta try it. I will honor that as an arachnophobe, you just won't have to look at it. You can put a blindfold on. You won't even taste it at that point.
It's one of those immersive restaurants where they turn off all the lights.
We won't even do the skittering sound effect. We'll leave that part out of it. I'm sorry. I'm done.
Dang it.
Brian!
What is Brian in the chat?
He says he's only here to slander Gozrick's cooking, and that's fine. That's fine, I guess. It's my own fault canonically making him a bad chef. And now
Oh, incredible. Welcome, Brian. Speaking of Lauren, though, Lauren actually has a question. She says, high-level play is rare on stream. Were there any spells or powers that you had access to at level 20 that you were excited to get to use?
Absolutely. I really, as a druid, it was cool because by level 19 or like level 18, I believe I had access to my highest level spells. Like I wasn't going to get a spell slot that was greater or anything like that. And so I was able to use like animal shapes, and I was able to do like all these cool things, specifically in like the Frostfall season when I got access to that tier, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go sleep and I'm gonna do it again. I'm just gonna burn these spell slots. But I think one of the cool things that I got to do, gosh, I've been thinking about it since I saw it, and I never got a chance to do it until the penultimate episode of Rivals, which was using True Resurrection. I think that spell is so cool. Up to 200 years.
That's like just so wild.
That's the wild thing. Like, oh my god, I could give me. Does it work on a hair? Can I grab Abraham Lincoln's top hat? Like, does that like work in that essence of?
Once I realized that one of my players had access to that, I was just like, I can't let them get near a graveyard ever.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is like a wild spell. And I had the ability of Gozrick lost a finger in an earlier episode. It was in the Space Jammer season. And I hope yeah, Brian already knows. I just held on to it. I didn't know what I was gonna do with it, but I was like, yeah. Gazrick holds on to his finger. And at a certain point, after he become level 20, Gazrick is essentially immortal in a lot of ways. His lifespan is like maybe like 10,000 years.
Jeez.
And with it, because he's a druid, he's already a gnome, so he's gonna live longer, and then he's got this like natural sort of existence, and then he becomes a mountain whenever he wants to like hibernate. So he's like he's living, but he's not living. And I was like, this is an immortal version of Gozrick. Kind of doesn't have a soul, right? Or at least his soul is now different enough from the version of him that was level 19 back in the Spelljammer season when he like so. Because part of the thing of True Resurrection is the soul needs to come back to the body. Yeah. The soul needs to move back. And so I was like, can I true resurrect a former version of myself? Is that
wild?
And thankfully, the people at the table let me do it.
That's wild.
It was I think it wouldn't have happened if we weren't like doing it at the finale and like in a moment where the episode itself was everyone was saying goodbye to Gozrick. Everyone was like, hey, we don't know the next time you go into hibernation if we'll still be here. The time skips were getting longer. You know, it was first like a week, then it became a month, and then it was like 10 years, and then like 25. Wow. And so who knew exactly where things were going to end up? And he had this moment where it was like, man, they get to say goodbye to me. Like they are literally saying goodbye to me right now.
Yeah.
How beautiful. I will not be there for them in the same way because of the life that I've chosen, the path that I've made. So let me, and Brian will say he doesn't think that this was actually with sincerity, and I meant it with 100% sincerity. Let me give you a version of Gozrick who can, and who will also die eventually, who will also do his own thing. But like at this moment, like someone should also be at essentially your funeral. Like someone should be there to grieve you, because he wouldn't be able to.
Yeah. Wow. That's, man, my writer brain is just going right now. Like that is so cool.
It is fun, man. I inadvertently created my own version of Looper. Which I did not expect.
Slightly less shotguns and balding. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love it. Let's see. This is from Maxi Kubert. Question: do you all have other rivals? Do you and all other rivals know each other very well, or did the rotating DM help with that? Like, I think essentially, like, did you know each other well beforehand?
I knew nobody before I joined the Rivals. Wow. Truly, and I mean this. I have been very, very fortunate in my D&D experience, where I met. Name dropping it. I met Carlos in Chicago because he's also a Chicago comedian, and he brought me on board and doing. I mentioned offhandedly on a shoot that we were both on that I like D&D, and then he brought me on board for some Roll20 stuff for a little bit, and then when he left Chicago, there's a vacancy because at that point Rivals was local, and so pre-pandemic, wild time.
What a time!
Wild time. And so he was like, hey, there's a Chicago cat I know, Masood. So, and I went and I was the only one who interviewed. I've been the only person who interviewed to be on Rivals. Me and Tanya had a whole thing where I was like, because they didn't know me. They were like, who is this guy? And I like, whatever. It's over now. And I met them, and then I got to meet everyone and sort of learn the Rivals and characters through that, and like rewatching some of the old stuff. That's why for me personally, I think after a season or two, I felt really comfortable where I was in my perception of it. I'll say this: when Brian Eugenio joined, though, within like 2 episodes, I felt like comfortable enough to like try and new things and like work with them. I really felt like our cast that we cultivated by the end of it was a real good combination of folks. And sometimes it just clicks. Yeah. So sorry for depends. It depends. Yeah.
Oh no. That was. I think that was a great answer for it. Lurking Writer's gonna have a last question here, which is, what do you think has been the most important thing you've learned whilst being part of Rivals?
The most important thing. I think I've really learned that people who work it is not a D&D thing, because it's more of like a professional TTRPG person thing. And I'll just say that like everyone who works in this industry is a human being, who is just like a dude or somebody who just also loves story and loves doing this. And like when I had a moment of like that, because I'll be real, and I think it still plays in and to any industry that you're a part of, but coming from particularly the comedy community in Chicago and like a way in which of like entertainment, there's a way in which you don't get the ability to just be friends with people and be kind and be nice. You're constantly wondering like, oh, I don't know if will I get the call back? Will I do this? And it's like, truly, it's like a moment of like, just be a person, just like get to just be people with people. And thankfully you have the benefit of y'all like to tell story. That makes it a little bit easier, right? Yeah, I think that has been the best thing I've been able to gain from my time with the Rivals.
I love that. That's so good. No, I totally agree about the I mean, at least about the TTRPG community, because that's why I got reference for it. But I mean, like, I've gotten to talk to people because of this show. I mean, I was listening to them for years and years on their shows and stuff. Absolutely. And then I get to meet them on here. I'm like, oh, you are just a cool person. Like that is so good. Like I love it.
And it's so, I really think one, obviously be inspired by people. Yeah. But two, meet your heroes in a way, if you get the ability to, and like understand them as human, because then it's so much cooler of also knowing, it's kind of rudely and a little selfishly, your own potential. Like you don't know what someone's gonna watch your content and be like, that is so cool, and like
love it. So good. Well, Masood, thank you so much for taking time today to talk with me. This has been an absolute blast, and I'm so happy you all got to end Rivals the way you did, and it was absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. It has been an honor to chat with you today. Thanks, folks, for hanging out. If you don't have Chef Gozrick skin, I hope when we talked about it, the details. I didn't even tell you this. It changes the ultimate.
Does it?
Yeah. It's a food fight now. It switches. It's a whole thing. It's real cool, man. They did a lot of really good stuff with this. I mentioned like cloudy with a chance of meatballs, and they were like, got it. And
I'm literally gonna, after the show, go put that skin on and go do the ultimate.
It is very fun. Folks at CNE Games, they're doing great work.
They do good stuff. It astounds me every time. Well, if people wanted to find you and what you do on the interwebs, where could they do so?
I mentioned it earlier, and Marood Boy. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter. That is my handle, MAHRUDEBOI. I don't tweet as much as I should. But I'm on Instagram a little bit more. I like to post stories of, honestly, predominantly my cats. And so you can
that's all you need to tell me. I'm gonna go follow you right now.
Come on over. They've got a lot of great pictures of them just napping about my apartment. But I also occasionally, I know I got a show coming up on the 24th of I'm doing one at Second City. I'm going on the main stage there.
Oh, nice.
And so if you're in Chicago, you want to come see it, come check it out. I'll post about that on my socials as well, so you can find more details there leading up closer to the date.
There you go. Be sure to go follow Masood on there and check out all the awesome stuff that he does. And go get Chef Gozrick. There is a lot of detail in just this one skin, so be sure to grab that and make your rivals formation just look awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Idle Insights. Masood, again, thank you so much. Until next week, take care of yourself.
See y'all.